An hour southwest of Houston, down a nondescript, undivided road, lies the remnants of one of the few true company towns in Texas. You've probably never heard of Newgulf, but 80 years ago, this was the most productive sulfur mine in the world. Deep below the marshy prairies of Wharton County lies the Bowling Dome, a geological formation rich in oil, salt, and sulfur. It was here in 1928, at the dawn of the Great Depression, that the Texas Gulf Sulfur Company planned and incorporated the town of Newgulf. The company built a large sulfur processing plant that boasted its own rail line and airport. In the master plan town adjacent to it were over 400 homes, ranging from simple one-bedroom dwellings to the palatial 4,000 square foot manager's estate. A hospital and a school were also built. Newgulf Drive, the town's main street, was lined with stores, a cafe, and even a theater. Newgulf was a close-knit and isolated town. Like in many other company towns, the residents here didn't own the real estate. The sulfur company retained ownership of nearly the entire town and leased houses back to the residents that it employed. By the town's peak in the 1940s, over 1,500 people lived here. The subsequent decade would be a period of significant change in the sulfur industry, and likewise, the one industry town that had been built. Extraction of sulfur increased worldwide, and at the same time, advances in technology greatly reduced the number of people required to run the plant. With the once booming industry in decline and few other options for employment, the residents of Newgulf began to leave. With long-term real estate prospects in question, the Texas Gulf Sulfur Company, who had been so insistent on owning everything in town, began to sell off homes and land. Over the next 50 years, most of Newgulf's residents left, with businesses and institutions closing in their wake. Today, nearly 3/4 of Newgulf's original homes are gone, and most of the pecan-lined, gridded streets of the town have been empty longer than they were ever occupied. The hospital, once essential to the remote industrial town, is long closed. The post office was able to hold out until the 90s. In a handful of places, however, the homes have been preserved. There are several blocks of the smaller workers' homes, some of which are still rented out today. Scattered among them are empty houses hanging on the fritz of past and present. Other places, small clusters of homes have been fixed up, conjuring up an image of what once the whole town must have looked like. One of the opulent manager's homes, perhaps the best preserved home in the town, sold in 2017 for nearly $500,000. Up until a few years ago, the golf course and country club were still in operation, and the clubhouse stands today as a prime example of the Spanish Revival architecture of Newgulf's civic buildings. This was the last business in the city to close. Newgulf Elementary School stands as the best preserved public building in the town. Because it's part of a larger school district, the school is still used as built, and to this day is attended by nearly 500 students from around Wharton County. The most visible relic of Newgulf's past is the pair of smokestacks that adorn the expansive sulfur processing complex. These masonry stacks are visible far beyond the town, and stand as the most iconic piece of the town's history. Some of the buildings that compose the surrounding complex remain to this day, although they've hardly been preserved. A handful are still used by the few remaining resource extraction operations. A larger portion has been demolished and turned into a county generating station. Most of the buildings, however, sit empty, windows broken and paint peeling. Down a dirt road, the nearly mile-long runway at the Newgulf Airport that once received well-moneyed Texas Gulf Sulfur executives still stands along with a handful of hangars, all losing a slow battle to time and nature. On my first visit here, I discovered something that surprised me: new construction. After losing a battle of economics and population for nearly half a century, the town seems to have charmed a handful of buyers and builders. Custom new homes occupy, in some places, entire blocks, nestled among orderly rows of pecan trees on mostly empty streets. There's plenty of space here to spread out. Blocks that once held 12 homes now might have 4. Perhaps the cheap land and quiet surroundings have drawn them here. Or perhaps, like me, they're drawn by the nostalgia and allure of being in a place that used to be.